Hello, bonjour, Jeanne here. I've taken another opportunity to have a quick chat with you and answer some questions and just a general chit chat on me and mine and my life and things. But firstly, I thought I'd just warn you. Obviously, again, I'm in front of the computer, so hopefully there's not too much reflection on my glasses, and I've had to rearrange everything to try and avoid that. You are sitting on a box at the minute because it's the only height I could get there. But a quick update on my foot. It's another thing. I'm going to have to keep looking at the screen because I didn't want to repeat myself and I didn't want to forget things. So I've got my juice to hand here, and so in case I get thirsty. But so the quick update on my foot is I don't have to wear the boot anymore. Yay. But I've still got to be careful. Apparently it's still fragile, so I'm not supposed to walk for long. I've got to wear, obviously, sensible shoes so that my foot doesn't go on its side again, because obviously we don't want it breaking again. He did though, he did tell me that I could still go on my bike and do my sports. You can imagine the look I gave him then. And he did laugh. So anyway, this, as I say, this is an opportunity to answer some questions that I've just gone back actually through all my comments from my videos quickly, which took a while, and hopefully I haven't missed any, and I did try and answer them as I get them in the comments, but there's a few that I've had that I thought would be a good opportunity to do in a video and talk about it rather than put it on the screen. So if I've spoken about some of this before in other videos, I can only apologise, but as you probably know, not everybody watches every video, so there's always a chance of me repeating myself because people don't know everything from every video. So this is more of a background on us as well. Let's see. I hope you've got your tea or coffee ready to be sitting and listening. Before I go any further, as looking back has reminded me that some of the viewers told me about their cancer stories, and I haven't read it again. I realise I haven't heard from any of them again, and I just sort of ask, let me know how you're doing. I've got some names here, and I dare say I'm not going to pronounce them properly, so it's likely that I will have to put them on the screen, because I'm bound to do the names a disjustice. But I've got Janet Planet 09, I've got Linda White, Mary Geisat, I think it is, and I've got North Angel 30 Leather, that's a mouthful, isn't it? Beth Stehauer, I've got 555NE, Hayley, Syl Parker, Janet McKinnon, and Julie Beswick Valentine. All of you, I hope you're well, and I hope, those of you that are still going through treatment that are not, suffering badly or anything, I hope it's going well. But please drop me a message and let me know. I'd like to know how you're doing, and if anybody just wants to have a chat, just drop me a message, or my email address is in the description. Always read the description because my contact details are there, and other important information for you. Okay, right, let's go. Here we are, going to answer some questions now. And the first one, right, we came from a town in England called Erith, and it was in Kent. I was always from that area. Duncan came from Worcester Park, which is in Surrey. It's a bit posher than where I was from, and they quite often get celebrities living in that sort of area. And in the end, we both lived in Erith, and we lived, it was about 30 miles from London. As you all know, I've got 4 children. I like to try and keep it a bit private. I don't like talking about their names and everything on screen. And if you are watching, children, and you don't mind me mentioning your name, tell me. And these children are from my previous marriage, and they have all now produced me 11 grandchildren, again, as some of you know. And the most recent one was in July. My children have all grown up to be amazing people, all hardworking, and they're raising my grandchildren magnificently. And they all live quite close to each other, which makes it a little easier when my time is limited when I'm visiting. And it also take comfort in the fact that they live close to each other. And as you know, we miss family terribly, but they all know why we moved here and have experienced their life here too. And if we'd waited until the children were ready to accept me moving away, I could have been too old to be renovating a house, and too old to enjoy it. So I would have lived with regrets, wouldn't I? Life's too short, and no one wants to live with regrets. If we'd have got here and it hadn't worked, then we'd have had a thought about going back. It wouldn't have been very easy because we've had no one to live. But, but in some ways, not having somewhere to go back to makes you work harder at staying here. So it was good, because a lot of people come here and they still have a bolt hole in the UK, and some do end up going back to that bolt hole, but we didn't want to do that. Besides the fact we needed the money. So what hasn't helped matters at the minute as well, making me, it made it more difficult to be able to go and see the children, is that my favourite way of travel was to fly back when I went on my own. And the airport I used to fly into is now closed. And as far as I can make out, it was due to COVID and lack of traffic. So there's nothing flying into Southend Airport as far as I'm aware, which is really sad. So my next favourite option to go back there now is to travel by train, and to go from our nearest big town, Laval, and then go back to London via Paris or Lille, and go on the Eurostar to London. And I'd rather do that than go by boat. I'm sure I've told you enough times that I don't really like to go by boat. I will do if I could tell that was going to be like a mill pond, I would get the boat. But I hate it. Scares me because I can't swim. I don't know whether that's why, but I just panic a bit if it's rough. And I'd rather not do the drive to the Eurotunnel on my own, but I'd still rather do that than get on the boat as well. Some people love the boat, and some people have got sea legs and they can cope with it, but I can't. Next question. I met Duncan in December 1997 at a Srock dancing. I think I mentioned that as well in my one of my other videos. At the time I was working in a children's nursery, and I became friendly with the deputy manager, and she'd invited me out to go to Srock dance class with her, and so I went. It wasn't long before I became friendly with a man called Duncan, who was there with his friend, and they were very good at Srock, and my friend had her eye on his friend, so which was handy. And what happened was they used to have a circle of men on the dance floor and a circle of women. I can't remember whether it was women inside, men out. I can't remember how it went. But then basically the circles would move, and when the music stopped, whoever was in front of you is who you had to dance with the next dance. Now this was always the dread for a lot of us, because you always think, please don't let me have the one that can't dance. I mean, I wasn't perfect, but it's no fun having your toes trodden on. So yeah, and obviously, yeah, if it's the worst dancer, it's just... And it wasn't long before the four of us no longer wanted to dance with anybody else, and so we used to dance to the side of the dance floor. We used to get some strange looks thinking you're supposed to be here for a class, but we danced to one side, and we used to get daggers from some of the women, because there was a few women there that used to make a beeline when it come to like freestyle or whatever. They'd make a beeline for Duncan, and because we all, the four of us, would wanted to just stay to the four of us, and but at that time they didn't know that we were already in a relationship, albeit a new one, and so yeah, so it was quite funny, and eventually we just thought, you know, we've learned enough, and we've met someone, basically. We've got our claws in. And so yeah, that we stopped going. And I mean, cutting a long story short, our friends got married not too many years after, and have now got two teenage sons. And whereas we waited until 2018, as you know, to get married, which was 22 years after we met. Also, when I met Duncan, there was a little bit of a time where I was a little bit concerned. In the end, I was lucky that he didn't have any desires of wanting children. I'd had enough of my own, of four, not as in, had enough as in right, four is quite enough. And I was 31 when I had my youngest daughter, and so I thought that's it for me. And he has to deal with my large family now anyway, and that's enough to deal with. Bless him, he comes from a small family. He's just got his sister and her family and his mum and dad, that's it. I was 38 when we met, and Duncan was 28, so you could understand that there was always a possibility that he might want children. About 3 months after Duncan and I moved in together, and I know that was taking a risk, wasn't it, after 3 months, but here we are still, you know, all these years later, so it must have been right. Deep down we must have known. And it wasn't too long, I think it maybe 2 years, that we decided we would buy a house together. So we'd done that, and then we'd moved from an apartment that I was staying in somewhere called Thamesmead, which was on a local authority property, because that's all I could get after I'd left my ex-husband. From that we went to Erith, where we ended up staying in Erith. And yeah, so we bought that house together. And so that's the end of the little tale about how we've met and what happened. So we go on to the next question. After about 5 years, we started browsing houses in France after we'd been avidly watching programmes such as Places in the Sun, where people go to different countries, and there's always the TV presenter takes them to houses and tries to sell them a house on the show. And we used to love watching those, and some of the properties they got that they could renovate, we just thought, oh, we could do that. So we did, and we searched the internet for houses that needed work, because we really wanted to buy one that was cheap that we could renovate. Duncan had already shown in the short time we'd been together that he liked to build and to make stuff himself, so I was confident that we could do this. And me just be the help, really. So we booked a trip over to Honfleur, which is again in the north of France, in Normandy. And we drove around lots and lots of villages in Normandy, which Normandy, if you don't know, Normandy is the closest department in France to the south of England. So we chose that because we thought backwards and forwards we wouldn't have too far to travel. And if we bought in Normandy, our family wouldn't have far to travel. And so that was our theory there. When we went on this trip to go around all the villages, we had a checklist of minimum desires that we felt each town or village needed to have. So in each town or village we drove through, I had the checklist, and I would tick off each time I saw, like if I saw a bar, if I saw the boulangerie, or I saw a little shop, I ticked it off. And when we got back to England after that trip, we then started to search for estate agents, or real estate agents as some of you would know it as. And we'd found a few and booked to go back to France to see them within weeks. While there, we said, you know, the agent said to us, would we be interested in looking at some in La Mayenne Department 53, because they're slightly cheaper. So obviously ears prick up. And we agreed, because by then we were determined we were going to buy or put an offer in on a property on that trip. So when we went to the agent's house, they ran their estate agency out of their house. We went there after, and while we were there, we met another English couple and their family. And they were sitting there, we were having a quick talk about it all. They were out umming and ahhing about a property they'd seen. And then they heard us say that we were going to be putting in an offer on the property we wanted. And if we didn't get that one, we were going to try the next one, because we were determined we weren't going to be coming backwards and forwards. We were going to try and buy it then and there. And that made them make their decision. And they put an offer in on theirs and got theirs as well. And they always said it's because of us that they bought, you know, now have a house in France, because it sort of persuaded them to make the decision then and there. Their home, I mean, we're still in touch with those. They're a lovely, lovely family, and we're still in touch with them. So we know now that, I mean, it's their holiday home. They had hoped that it would be somewhere they could retire to. Not sure whether that's likely to happen thanks to Brexit now, but, you know, it depends. I think it sometimes all comes down to finances, as always. So yeah, so they've got a place here now as well. Once our offer had been accepted, we then had to put our house on the market. So we remortgaged our house in Erith to get the money to pay for the French house. So soon after, we then decided we put our house on the market, because the market at that time was really good. As it turned out, we'd made like 100% on the price of what we paid for it. Or more than that. We paid 65 and we got 165 in like 5 years. So for us, that was fantastic. So this enabled us to buy a flat. So we downsized to a flat, or an apartment as some of you would call it. So we lived in this flat for, I think that was again about 4 or 5 years. And we then travelled to and from France, renovating and spending holidays here. I was so desperate to leave England once we had the house, and it was heartbreaking every time we came over here on holiday. Even though we'd worked or renovating the house, each trip we come out, we do half working on it and half sort of holiday. And when it come to going home, I'd just be in tears in the car on the way to the ferry or to the tunnel, whichever way we were coming home. We'd try and come over every 3 months or so, and eventually we decided it was time that we needed to sell the flat. Initially we thought, well, we'll rent the flat out and we'll just live off the income, not thinking at that time we were going to need the money to renovate the house I'm now sitting in. So we did decide we'd sell it, and it didn't take too long to sell. And then I'd handed in my notice at my work. Duncan kept working for another 3 months, and for those 3 months we obviously hadn't got anywhere to live, so we lived with Duncan's parents. And then once Duncan had done the last 3 months working, we moved out here. It was a very emotional time, leaving that family behind, and it took me a good, I think Duncan was in and settled immediately. It took me about 3 years to properly settle, but I did feel at home here, definitely. And I remember after about 3 months thinking, we're here, we're never going back. And it was like, my heart could have burst. I was just so happy that we'd finally done that move and we were here, and it was just an amazing feeling. Next question. We can, and I'm not sure if you would say we were fluent, but we generally get by without too much of a struggle. Telephone calls can be difficult because it's obviously much easier face to face, and we can read French better than we can speak it. And of course there's always the help of Google Translate. And that's improved. It used to be really difficult because it would do a literal translation and it would sound really silly. Like one example was, my neighbour must have thought I was mad. I kept saying, was it il fait chaud or something like that? I was trying to say I was hot, as in like hot temperature, and I sort of get a funny look. And you start to realise after a while it's j'ai chaud, I have heat. And it was, and afterwards you start feeling out, because when you're saying you're hot here, it means you think you're attractive or sexy. So you can imagine what he thought of me. When we were first here and starting to get to know the neighbours, it was difficult for both of us. But Duncan always had a better understanding of the language than me. But I've caught up very slowly. And now in conversation we turn to each other when we can't remember a certain word. But it's strange how you can think of that word when it's not your conversation. And it doesn't help matters when your friends and neighbours speak the local patois rather than the French that we understand. Duncan can still tunes in quicker than I can, but I am improving and they are so patient with us. My French improved a lot in the last 3 years, having to go to hospital so much, and then having to get French taxis, and I was forced to speak French, especially with the taxi drivers, as they rarely spoke a word of English. Occasionally if they did, they'd like to try a word on you, and my main taxi driver used to get his Google Translate out and try sometimes. And the French often apologise for not speaking English, which is kind, but they shouldn't need to or have to, because it's up to us to learn French. And after a while I began to get complimented on my French by the medical staff, so that was great. I learnt from one of the nurses recently that in the hospitals the medical staff are now obligated to learn English because of the amount of English patients they now have, and of course there's lots of other countries that speak English, or here I mean, and I always compliment them on their English when they do try, and it always puts a smile on their face. So, you know, because you can understand it. If someone says your French is good and you say their English is good, you know exactly how they feel. And what we need to remember too is that when you live here or you live in a foreign country and you know that the hospital staff are now speaking more English, hospitals are a lot less scary than they used to be. I know of people that have returned to the UK because they were so scared of getting old and not being able to be understood in the hospital. And that's a real shame that they've given up their dream because of that. But knowing now that they're learning English will make things so much better. And some people just can't learn language, can they? So, I mean, that, you know, it's a shame that they're probably thinking when they were younger, I wish I'd learnt then, but it's not something you're thinking about. You just want to go and have your life. You're not thinking about having to speak to someone in that country. Next question. We have, and we love it. When we first come over, our intention was to integrate into the French way of life, become friends with the French, and neither are easy, but you have to put yourself out there. It's just not going to come to you. When we got here, we were so anti-British because that was when we come over that that was part of the reason that we did move over in the first place. We were getting very tired of, in the area we lived and the way people behaved and things, and it really got us down. That plus the British government, you know, we don't like how they were doing things either. So we were determined to lose ourselves in the French way of life. As I said, it isn't easy. And it's, you know, I mean, Duncan mainly working for English people. It was inevitable that we were going to end up with English friends quicker. But once you live in here, you start to realise that you're in a different country where you don't speak the language, and you start to realise the need to speak to like-minded people for support. I started, after we'd been here a year, I started a Facebook group for people in the Mayenne where we are, because you start as well to realise that department to department things are done differently. So if you're having to do something legal, or you know, something similar that it's to do with the department, it made sense to have a group to go to speak to, and everybody knew exactly what would happen or should happen in that department, because you could go into the Lyon, which is another one we're on the border of, and that department could do things totally differently. So it made sense to me and peace of mind to know that whoever I asked on that group would be talking, you know, through their experiences of what they needed to do in the Mayenne. So all this helped, and the group's been going now for 8 or 9 years. Within a few years, we'd become very good friends with our neighbours, Leon and Natalie, you've heard me mention before, and we began to socialise with them a lot. They just really took us under their wing. And we'd be going into them for meals and apéros, or we'd have a party in our garden and they'd be coming to that, and they'd help us set that up, and they'd help us clear that after the next day. And we used to have a yearly garden party in July for Duncan's birthday, and it happens to be that Natalie's birthday is exactly the same day, and it's on Bastille Day, which is Fête Nationale in France. So it was a good excuse really to have a good party. So it's always a good thing, but again, due to COVID, we haven't had that for a few years, and obviously haven't been in the best of health to do that. So whether we'll do that again, we'll have to wait and see. And Natalie and Leon tell us that they really love being friends with us because we do things differently to the way they do things, and they love to learn about different cultures as we do. And we make a point of talking to all our neighbours in the closest vicinity, except for one. For some reason, they just seem to keep themselves to themselves, which is fair enough. But we started to think it was us, but we don't think it is from what we can gather. But we still talk to them. We're still bonjour if we see them, same as anybody in France. It's very rare that you walk past someone and they don't acknowledge you and say bonjour at least. But I can also understand if the French don't speak to us, very often they're as shy as we were when we come. They're scared to talk to us because they don't think we're going to understand them, or maybe they think we're going to answer them in English and they're going to be like a rabbit in headlights. So you can understand it a bit. And on the other hand, we've got elderly neighbours in the village who will just go for it. They've got all the time in the world. They can stand and they'll chat to you for ages, and they'll wait for an hour for you to find that word if they have to. And it really makes you feel better because you think, well, I'm not so scared talking to them. Although, again, one especially talks patois, and he talks very fast, but he's the sweetest man. So yeah, as I say, we're close friends with Leon and Natalie. Get together with them a lot. Sometimes we'll have a games night, sometimes it'll be a meal or just apéros or all of the above. We've taken trips to the coast with them, which usually ends up with Natalie buying some mussels, bringing them back. She cooks them in the house, and then we have a meal in the evening, and there'd be more apéros. and we just have good fun. And Natalie recently, because Duncan's got an Xbox, and we used to there's like a game for dancing and sports and everything, and she's quite competitive and she loves all that. And we managed to get them a second-hand one, and she's really into that at the minute. So that's another thing, that when we have a pair of, sometimes we're now playing games on the Xbox. Yeah, it's all good fun. She's not a very good loser, though, I have to say. She likes to cheat, but it does make it funny. Another thing is, and they're all basically, as I say, they're good fun. They're both very caring, and they'll do anything for us. Duncan has helped Leon on several occasions with something in the house, and that always results in being asked that evening over for a meal or for a Perro's. And yeah, it just makes the whole thing so relaxed. And while I've been laid up, she always pops in at least once a week to check on me. We've had some funny occasions where things have gone wrong because it got lost in translation. There was one time we were in the restaurant. We arranged to meet at a restaurant for one of our neighbours, sadly died since, but we stood at the bar in the restaurant waiting for them, and they stood in their house waiting for us there because they had said about having a Perro's in the house before we go to the restaurant. And this all got lost in translation. So because as we thought, well, if something's gone wrong, so we got in the car and we drove back to try and find out what was happening. And as we were driving back, we saw them walking towards the restaurant. So then we had to do a quick U-turn and come back. And when we got in the bar, everybody just thought it was hilarious because we just totally got it wrong. We've never lived it down, mind you. They've never let us forget it. But it was funny. And things that say have happened like that on several occasions. And I'm always the brunt of their laughter because it's not so much now. Now I've got better, but Leon used to think I was hilarious, not understanding him. But it's lovely. As they've been waiting for my foot to heal so that we can go to Cancao again, which is where they go and was where they love to go all the time. Last weekend they went there. What they tend to do, Leon goes down to the sea and he fishes, and Natalie goes to the market and she just does that, and then they get together and have something to eat and come home. And we like to do that with them. So it's lovely. We used to be members of the animations team of the village. They're a team that would get together, and mostly what they would organise would be once a year there'd be a meal, and the meal would be they'd sell tickets to raise money for the school in the village. And the other one would be the Fête de Musique, which is always around the sort of second or third week of June, and we'd have amateur bands play, and so all of that needed organising and all the food connected to it. And although it was really difficult for me and Duncan because you'd see them doing things in a certain way and you knew they could do it better, but they're very stubborn, the French. They've just got to, this is the way we always do it, we're not changing. And that used to be quite frustrating because they'd almost nod at you as if to acknowledge what you're saying and then go off and just carry on and do it anyway. And you knew that certain things could be done better, but so yeah, but again, I keep saying it, but due to COVID, as you all know, it's put a spanner in the works for lots of things. But due to COVID and my health, we haven't now been part of that committee for about 4 years. So I don't know we don't know, will it happen again? Don't know. But it was a great way to get to know people and people to get to know us, and they liked us being part of it because they probably see the English as being scared to join in and to do things. But I think that's getting better. They realise that we do want to do things. Right, next question. We do not. But we do have a carte de séjour. And the carte de séjour gives us the right to live in France for 10 years. And then it can be renewed after those 10 years. And you have to produce so much paperwork to even get that. But there's no sort of interview involved. Well, there is an interview involved, but it's basically just a quick chat about your work and take your fingerprints and things like that. But it's not like if you're going to go for nationality, that's a different thing. Our intentions were to become French citizens or to obtain the French nationality. And we took specific French lessons to improve our language for the interviews. But again, life got in the way, and we, you know, all the time we've got our carte de séjour, we feel safe, or less concerned anyway. We've been here for 10 years. We've only had a carte de séjour for 3 years, I think. So we've got a way to go yet. And we're not likely to be chucked out, especially as we're earning money here. And having the Jeep, we're bringing money in as well and earning money from that as well. So all the time we're contributing to the system, they're not likely to be chucking us out. Next question. Because we pay around 27% of our income into the system, as I said, we get a percentage of what we pay for medication and care returned to us. So, for example, we pay €25 every time we visit the doctor. In the end, we only pay, I think, about €8. We get the rest of that back. So that's, you know, to us, for us personally, that's obviously affordable. Bizarrely, the French system requires you to pay that up front, and then they reimburse you later on. And they only do that though if you've got a carte vitale, which is basically your social security card, and you give that every time you get any medication or every time you see the doctor or hospital. They ask for that, they put it in their machine, and it goes into the system, and they know who you are and everything. So, and then that they've got the numbers on that to then reimburse you later on, or knock it off there and then, which doesn't happen very often. But we've also got top-up insurance, but only for hospital care. We're a bit funny about our insurances. Sometimes you feel like it's all pay out, pay out, pay out, and you never really get anything back for it. And we just happened to pay this in 2018. We decided we were going to do hospital care, and of course 2018 is when I went into hospital. But obviously, ironically, the care I got was free. But had it been something else, we were lucky we had the insurance in place. But we're now, say, considering, because you can get optical and dental care included in top-up insurance as well. And a lot of people do that, but it's quite a lot of money. But we're now considering, if we can get a better deal, we're considering that we'll possibly go for optical and dental, especially the dental. I mean, the opticians and glasses here is ridiculously expensive, so we tend to go to have our tests done, eye tests and that done in UK. Trouble is, we're never there long enough to get the glasses. At the moment, we're waiting for friends to bring our glasses back with them for us, because we couldn't wait around for them to be processed. And obviously, of course, to say my cancer care was free, my taxis to and from the hospitals were free as well. So, and they were amazing taxis, so clean and felt luxurious. And the service was impeccable. I mean, my taxi driver was named Stefan. He'd turn up, come to the front door for me, open the door for me, and I'd get in. And then sometimes I'd just say, can I mind if I just play my game on my phone, because I didn't really feel like the headache of trying to speak French. And he was absolutely fine. He'd just get on and drive. It was only awkward when we had like the hour and a half journey into Le Mans when I was going for my MRI scan. And so then I'd sort of try and talk occasionally, because I find it, as you can tell, I find it hard not to talk. But, you know, he was great. We get to the hospital, and because I'd always get lost in the hospital, as you often do, he knew exactly where I was going. So he'd escort me in, make sure I was at the right place, at the desk and everything, and then he'd say, right, I'll be back for you, or I'd send him a text to say I'm ready, and he'd come back and get me and walk me back out again. Amazing. When I'd finished treatment with him, I got him a couple of bottles of wine and some chocolates for his family and things. So yeah, so that's the crux of most of the questions. So just talking on just some other subjects really, just to finish off with. I said I've been looking through the comments and things, but I just wanted to ask you a question, and just really just to say where I am at with filming and things. I just want to ask you, has my filming improved? And also comment on, it seems that some people seem to like me doing a car journey, some don't. Then there's some people that like my background music, and some don't. I try and keep it low if I'm doing a voiceover, but I do think if in the gaps when I'm not talking, I think it's nice to have a bit of music in between, as long as I've not got it too loud. I've had compliments on some of the music that I've played, so some people seem to want to see shorter videos, and others want to sit down with a cup of tea or coffee and enjoy an hour's video. So at the moment I'm finding it really hard to please everybody, and obviously we all know you can't, that's impossible anyway. So I'm going to try and mix it up a little bit, and with the hope of pleasing at least some of you, hopefully all of you. So another thing I was looking, as I'm looking through, it's reminded me there's a lot of names there that I used to see names quite often, and the amount of comments I get obviously don't match the amount of viewers got because it's not going to, but it just reminded me of a lot of people I was talking to that I'd like to just have a comment from, just to know you're still out there, because it's important to me to know that you're still watching. That's what I do this for. And I like to chat with all of you. As you've gathered, if you look at the comments, you're not likely to have an answer back from me, because I like to have a chat, and so just basically understand that us YouTubers like to know you're there. We like to hear from you. You haven't all got time to do that, I know, but it's important to us. Those of you that came over from Michael Petherick's Doing It Ourselves channel will now know what I meant when I said I do not live a chateau life at all. It's very different. That's why I love to go and visit Billy and Gwen and Michael at the chateau. It's just a nice experience when we can visit them. But yeah, so you know now, and hopefully I haven't lost too many of you thinking that you were going to get something similar, because I did say in that interview that it wouldn't be. It's all for those that don't live in a chateau. And just for your info, in case you're curious, we live about 20 minutes from Chateau de la Motte, if that rings a bell with you, or Motte Husson, should I say, where Dick and Angel Strawbridge live. And they came from Chateau DIY. Did you ever see that programme? Then, but we're about 30 minutes from Chateau de la Basmanie, which is where Billy Petherick and Gwendolyn Mouchel are, and of course Michael in his cottage. And then we're about 25 minutes from Chateau Ballieu, and that's where Philip and Angelina Bailey-Smith are. So we know, I mean, we don't really know Dick and Angel, although I've spoken to her in email because I send her a bulletin that we do every month, but I don't actually know them. But we do obviously know we're quite good friends with Billy and Gwen, and we know Philip and Angelina quite well. And the other person that I've spoken to and met is Stephanie Jarvis from Chateau Diaries. I'd love the opportunity to visit Chateau de Lalande. It's a long drive away, but if I could get the money together, I'd love to spend a few days there, because it just looks lovely. And when I met her at the party at Billy and Gwen's 2 or 3 years ago, it was lovely to meet her, and we met some of the other chateau owners that were on the same programme. And I'm still in touch with Michael. It was him and his partner used to have a chateau, which they haven't got now, but I'm still in touch with him on Facebook. So yeah, it's so So I mean, my main information telling you that really was if any of you were ever thinking about staying in our cottage, you know, that we're close enough to these people that you'd be able to at least drive past and see their chateaux, and they are lovely. So hopefully that's answered some of your questions. It's given me the opportunity to have a good chat with you, and it's quite frustrating sometimes. I'd much rather have you sat here with me having a chat, but because I don't know what your reactions are, do I? But there you go. So I hope you enjoyed that, and hopefully I didn't lose the people that only like a short view, and hopefully some of you were there long enough to finish your tea or coffee. I've just got my juice, which I didn't finish because I've been talking too much. So I'll see you in the next video, and don't forget, like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Au revoir.